So it's rare that I do presentations where and I'm using finger quotes here that you can't see, that I am lecturing, but I'm going to spend a few minutes here. I think it's appropriate at this point in the semester to provide a discussion about, well, it's more of a lecture. We're not discussing here, but more of a lecture on looking at educational technology from a research point of view and really the field. So the field of educational technology, which, yeah, I know this is an obvious statement, but you're all getting your master's degree in. So I'm going to provide a definition of educational technology. I'm going to talk about some of the components that make it up. And then I'm going to talk about, starting with around the 1950s to the present, the research and the shift in how educational technology has been viewed, and really from not only a use point of view, but also a research point of view, because they're tied together. And then I'm going to end with talking about where we are now with a lot of the educational technology research, and then end with providing you some resources on journals that you should know in our field, and also how you can stay current with trends that are happening in our field, and just really as an educational technology scholar, as you're becoming by getting your master's, just how to stay informed in the field. So there's a lot of different kind of things and ideas in this presentation. So here we go. So educational technology, and here's a definition. So if you look from a visual design point of view, it's not a great idea to put a lot of text on a slide, but for our purposes here, I really wanted you to have this definition. So this is the best way to give it to you. So this definition is a classic definition, even though it's from 2008. It is in the field of educational technology. This is one that's often cited, and it's the one that I like the most. And so if you look at this definition, and I know I'm going to read it for you, even though I know you're capable of reading. But as I read it, I want you to think about the things that are in there that are actions, things that you would do as part of educational technology. So educational technology is a study and ethical practice of learning facilitation and improved performance through the creation, use, and management of appropriate technological processes and resources. So that's a mouthful, but if you notice that it's not only the study, but it's also the practice, an ethical practice of facilitating learning and improving performance. And performance can be in a lot of areas. If you think in K-12, performance could be performance as a physical sense, and in physical education in that sense, and it also could be performance on in a lot of cognitive ways with different skills. But it's the learning facilitation and improved performance through the creation. So you're creating, you're using, and you're also managing technological processes and resources. So it's not just the physical technology, but it's also processes that we use. And in K-12, that's pedagogy and assessment is really what that is, and all of the processes we use within a classroom setting. So that is a classic definition. And just a fun fact, Melinda, which is one of the authors who created this, was my dissertation chair. And so he was also one of my professors. So if we look at that definition, we break it down. Educational technology and what you're studying and what you're getting immersed in over the next 16 weeks has to do with a lot of different areas. Obviously, the physical technologies that we use. Pedagogy, assessment, and pedagogy it's the practices, the how-to of what we do in the classroom, the methods, the strategies that we use to teach. Assessment, part of it is educational psychology and learning that. And next semester, you talk about that with learning theories. Instructional design is part of it. You deal with that next semester as well in 2 courses that you take. Visual design, learning theory, again, research, change theory, innovation adoption, and even management. How to manage not only the technology used, but a learning environment. And it's not just managing students, but managing everything, your resources, your students, the learning that takes place, the tools that you have. All of these are components of educational technology. So it's a lot of stuff, and probably looking at it that way is kind of broaden and I hope it has, your understanding of what educational technology is. So it includes a lot of things. It's not just technology. It's just not using it in your classroom with your students. It includes a lot of different components and a lot of different components that researchers have done research on. So you'll find research in all of those areas related to educational technology. So if we look at educational technology, and really starting from the 1950s, when we had technology in the form of what we know now as computers, a digital technology. And if you think back to the 1950s, you're thinking, what? We had computers back then? Yeah, much different than what we have now, obviously. But back in the 1950s, specifically related to what was happening in education with technology, from basically the 1950s to the 1980s, we were learning about technology. So how to use tools, how to use the computer, how to program the computer, how the computer was put together. What are the different elements or parts of a computer? So really from the 50s to the 80s, it was learning about the technology. Because it was so new, that's what the focus in education was on. There was a shift somewhere towards the end of the mid 1980s to starting of the 1990s, and really through 2005, we started learning from technology. So there was software created on computers, and students would use this software to learn from. You know, you could go back in the Wayback Machine and think back to Oregon Trail. And hopefully some of you remember that piece of software. But Oregon Trail, that's learning from technology, using the computer as a device to learn from. Is very much drill and practice, very much a lot of it was passive with little student interaction. And that, really it started about the 1990s to 2005. It's kind of, that was how technology was being used in schools. So there was another shift, 2015, and I say, well, actually, not just me, but Loretta and I, we wrote a chapter about this. There was another shift from around the mid to early 2000s, about 2005, and even to the present. It's still going on. It's the concept of learning with technology. So we're not just learning from technology, but we're using technology to learn with. It's more of becoming a tool that helps us and helps students learn. They use it in a variety of ways, not just in drill and practice kind of ways where there's a little input, but now we're using it to collaborate. We're using it more as a creativity tool. Students are now creating content. They're learning with the technology. Well, we happen to see in what we believe is another shift taking place, and we call that learning through technology. And the difference is, and it's a slight difference from learning with technology, but the idea is learning through technology. Technology now can actually, it's not just a tool that's isolated that when we need to use it's there, but now think about what you're doing. You're learning through technology. If you didn't have the technology, you wouldn't be able to take this master's program because it's all online. So technology now is allowing us to learn anywhere, anytime, and that's what we have shifted. We believe we're shifting through to a different phase, which is learning through technology. So technology now is shaping the classroom environment, shaping the educational context that you're in, and it really is becoming it is in our sense with our program, it is the learning environment. So it is no longer an add-on, it has just become part of the educational landscape. So now we're learning through technology. We believe we are shifting into a new a new focus with technology. And so technology is now, it's really shifting what school looks like. It is shifting how we learn, when we learn, who we learn with. And so I think we're in an exciting time because of what technology allows us to do. So that's kind of a shift, and it's important to think about that as graduate students who are taking a program in educational technology. It's good to know how we've shifted over time. Are are we still learning with technology? Of course. Are we still learning from technology? Of course we are. Are we still learning about technology? Of course we are. But as as a whole, I think the shift is not with any one of those. It's more of technology being looked at as learning through it, allowing us to shift how education takes place, where it takes place, when it takes place, and with whom it takes place with. So that's kind of where we are now with educational technology. Um, Again, Loretta and I just finished this chapter this summer where we wrote about that. So if anyone's interested in it, we can get you a copy of that. So let's look at specifically at the educational technology research and kind of the themes, some of the major themes, really from the 1990s to around 2010, I think. And some of this is still going on, but again, these are like the major, 20-year time period. This is a kind of educational research that was going on. And there are things that you need to know as well. I think it's important that you have this kind of understanding as a scholar in ed tech. So one of the big areas of research was something called the Clark-Kozma debate. Two professors, one of them wrote an article about that the medium, technology, had a great impact on the learning that took place with students, not just K-12 students, but students in general or learners in general. And Kozma came along and said, no, that's not it. It's really the pedagogy. It's the methods. It's how it's used. Technology will never have an effect on learning or students learning. And so they wrote a series of articles in around the early to mid 1990s debating this, going back and forth. It's a very interesting debate. If there's plenty of websites out there that summarize the main tenets of their arguments, but it is still something in ed tech that will surface to this date with some of the research. Is it the technology that has the most impact that we use, or is it the way, the pedagogy, the methods that have the most effect? So I'm not going to jump in and give my opinion about it because I think there's even though it sounds like I am now, there are good points on both sides of this debate. One of the other big areas was Peggy Ertmer and Thomas Newby, and they were out of Purdue University in Indiana. Barriers to technology adoption. Why do some teachers adopt technology and others do not? And so what are those barriers that stop or prohibit or just get in the way of teachers integrating technology in the classroom? It is classic research. A lot of the current research on why teachers integrate or don't integrate technology and how they integrate is based upon their work. So another area, technology use, but research was on it in isolated case studies. So it were more practice, how I used. For instance, there was a lot of research on whiteboards in the classroom, interactive whiteboards. How, talking about how a particular teacher or a group of teachers integrated or used those tools in the classroom. There's a fair amount of case studies on a variety of technologies about how the technology was used. One other area is controlled quasi-experiments, so quasi-experimental research, and you'll read more about that in the weeks to come. But it's really experiments set up and to show how technology can affect learning. Richard Mayer, he is a professor of educational psychology. He's been doing this for years. He's one of the most well-known in the field of educational psychology and the use of technology. He's out of University of California, Santa Barbara. He has done a lot of research about the effects of multimedia design on learning, classic work, and he has had a lot of influence on the field and how we use technology. A lot of his work, again, they're experimental, so it's quasi-experimental. He sets up experiments within a controlled environment. Not necessarily in a K-12 classroom or even in a college classroom, but controlled environments where he tests subjects on using technology and how that affects their learning. And it's really the design of instruction using technology, specifically multimedia, how sound and audio together, text and audio together, how all of those can help students' learning. So he's done a lot of research on that. He continues to do it, but a lot of his work has been through the 1990s and up to 2010. So that's the field of educational technology, where it's been for really for the last 20 years, maybe even 25 years, and what's been done. So where are we now with educational research or educational technology research? We are looking at the impact of technology use. So we're really focused now on research that can indicate and demonstrate that technology has specific use of technology in the classroom environment, in an educational context of some sort, whether it's formal or informal learning, whether it's K-12 or higher ed, or even in business, that it does have some impact on specific learning outcomes and achievement to some degree. And as you know, I say achievement, you got to be specific with that, but that's where we are. So it's the impact. Technology's been around long enough that we now need to start showing that it does have some effect, and look at what kind of effects it has on learning. Effective pedagogy, so best practices. What are the most effective methods and strategies that we can use that technology can enhance? Like problem-based learning or project-based learning is a big one right now, and how technology can enhance that. Collaborative learning, how technology can help students learn critical thinking, creativity skills. The focus is on the pedagogy and how technology can help facilitate that. There's a lot more longitudinal studies, so showing over time students who are using technology, what kind of gains do they make academically over time. That's studies are being done on that. And if you think back to Ellis's work that we read in the first couple weeks, where he talked about program evaluations, looking at innovations or a large program, and when I'm programming, I don't mean a piece of software. I mean something like some type of reading curriculum or math curriculum, some type of technology curriculum. I know some of you in K-12 in elementary use something that's called ST Math, GG Math. It's a curriculum focusing on the technology that they created, the software that they created. So program evaluation would be looking at and studying how that, as a school-wide or a district-wide, how that over time impacted student learning. So we're shifting more and looking not just at isolated cases of a teacher using software or technology like I talked about through in the 1990s to 2010. We're looking more district-wide, school-wide, even statewide on how technology is impacting student learning. So that's kind of where we are now with the research. So if you want to stay current and in educational technology, here are some resources, and let me explain them. So the first one is trendsandissues.com. It's an actual blog and website that I maintain with a colleague of mine out of East Carolina University, Abby Brown. We do a podcast every 2 weeks about issues or trends and issues in educational technology, instructional design and learning sciences. And so that's one way. Look out there and see what blogs and podcasts exist on the topic. That's one way to stay current with the trends. Horizon reports. The Horizon report is, and I can't think of the name, the Consortium of School Networking. Oh man, I can't remember. I'm embarrassed I can't remember what group does this, but every year they come out with an annual report, and they've done this, I believe, close to 10 years now, looking at the trends in K-12 and higher ed and predicting the technology trends that's going to have the near effect on schools and learning, which is a year. They go 3 years out and 5 years out. Those are great reports to read and stay up on. Project Tomorrow is another one with their Speak Up reports. They are an Irvine-based group who does annual surveys on teacher, student, admin, and parent perceptions of technology. And what I love about it is you can see self-reported how teachers are viewing technology use, how parents are viewing it, what they want for their kids to use with technology in schools. And I think the most important part is from the student perspective. What do they want with the use of technology? What devices do they have access to? What are they using? So I know in 523 we have pointed you to, I believe we have pointed you to those reports, but that's a good one to look at as well. And I'm sure some of you who teach in K-12, your schools may have even had you fill out the survey. It's an annual survey that they try to gather data from throughout the U.S. The last one is it's a book, comes out every year. It's called Educational Multimedia and Technology Yearbook. It's a good summary of the field and what's happening in technology, and it doesn't necessarily deal specifically with K-12, but it does. There are articles or chapters about that, and it's just a good way to see what's being done in the field and the research and what scholars are thinking. So those are some resources, and I've linked to them, where you can stay current and on what's happening, not only with the research but trends in the field from K-12 and higher ed, and see what people are thinking about, what they're researching, and the tools that are coming out. Okay, and the last resource I'm going to share are two pretty good lists of journals in our field that focus on educational technology. They don't get, I think the first one isn't updated as often as the second one is, but there's still a good start to finding journals. The first one is peer-reviewed journals. The second one includes a variety of them. So these are two good places that you can go to find journals in our field to stay up on the research, to help you with your lit review, and just to stay current with what's happening in our field. Okay, so I hope this helped. Just kind of give you an overview to dig deeper into our field, give you a definition, what components that make up our field, how the shift in technology has taken place since the 1950s to now, especially related to its use in K-12 schools, and where we're headed with the research, and where we started from, really starting from the 1990s till now, and where we're headed, and also giving you some resources to stay current in our field, not only in the research, but in the trends as well.